Hey, what's up everybody? This is Joshua Casper. I'm here with Plugin Boutique, and today we're taking a look at iZotope Ozone 7's vintage modules. I really like the compressor and the tape saturation module, but I also really like to use compression and saturation in a parallel processing situation. Parallel processing is when you take 50% wet signal, mix it with 50% dry signal, and usually plugins have a dry-wet knob or a dry-wet parameter, and the vintage units, and in fact all the units in the Ozone suite, don't have a dry-wet knob. But there's a way to work around that inside of Ableton Live, so I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'm also going to show you why parallel processing is really good. So I've already went ahead and set up the compressor and the tape saturation module the way I like it, in the way I think it sounds really good. So I'm going to close out of those. I'm going to play you this drum loop so we can hear what it sounds like with the compression and saturation. Okay, and what I can do, if I want to A-B these or bypass them both at the same time, what I can do is group them. Right click, when after selecting both, right click and hit group or Control G. And now I can turn the group on and off, which will give me a bypass for both the modules as opposed to just bypassing one at a time. And I should have mentioned this before, but you should definitely have some good headphones on or a really good set of monitors to hear these effects a lot clearer and a lot better. So now that I have that grouped and I have the compressor and the saturator on, I want to play you this version, which is with the saturation and compressor 100% wet. And I want to play you what I'm going to show you how to do, which is a parallel compression New York style processing. So here we go, let's check those out. So channel 1 here is the 100% wet, and channel 2 is the parallel / New York style. And I mean, that's night and day. In my headphones right now, those are two completely different monsters. They both sound really good, but this parallel style definitely sounds a lot better. I'm talking next level. There's just no way around it. I'm sure you hear it too. So I'm going to show you how to do that, even though iZotope doesn't have a dry-wet knob inside of it. So I'm going to go back to channel 1. And I've still got my group here, and I can expand the effects rack to show the macros and the chains. And if I right click right here, I can create another chain, and I can rename that second chain dry. And as you can see, there are no effects applied to it, so that's a dry signal. And if I rename this top one wet, and this has the effects on it. The next thing we need to do is hit chain, and this is the chain selector. If we take this top row right here for the wet and drag it all the way over to 127, you can see that number below there. We actually want to go over to just 126, and then if you hover over close to the edge, you'll get that bracket, and if you hover up, you'll see that that little thin white line has actually become a little bit brighter. That means I can move over that and make a ramp from 0 to 126. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the dry, except instead of being on 0, I'm going to move it to 1, and then bring it all the way over to 127, and then do the same thing with the ramp, but make it the other way. And the final step is to take the chain selector, which is this little line up here at the top, right click and map to macro 1. And now when the chain selector is at 0, we're getting 100% wet signal, which is from the compressor and the saturator. And if we go to 127, we have a completely dry signal. And if we want to do parallel processing, which is 50-50, we type in 64, which is halfway between 0 and 127. And now we have parallel processing using iZotope's Ozone vintage modules. And of course, if I wanted to go further, I could go more dry or more wet. Essentially what I've done is made a dry-wet knob for whatever effects I have in the first chain inside of this effects rack. So obviously I could put other modules in there and I could make adjustments and everything would be a-okay. But I just wanted to share with you, just in case you're a fan of parallel processing like I am, how to do it inside Ableton Live and how to do it with iZotope Ozone, because they don't have a dry wet knob natively. I hope you learned something. We'll see you next time.